Hello and welcome to Design Review. This is Robert Haynes, founder of Engineering Your Life, and this is the podcast for Engineering Your Life. Today, my guest is Kelli Boyden. I am really pleased to introduce all of you to Kelli. I met Kelli, as I meet most people these days, on LinkedIn, and in particular in the Weird LinkedIn community, which really means she's an authentic, real human with real life experience. And we just had the most delightful conversation like a month ago. And in the middle of the conversation, while I was just enjoying getting to know Kelli, I'm like, oh, I want to have you on my podcast because of the life experiences she's had. I'll give you a little bit of an overview. So Kelli spent 25 years working as an attorney and then shifted gears and got some training in natural plant medicine and got an MS in pharmaceutical science, which is not your normal lawyer career pivot. So we're going to be interested in talking about that. And the work that she does now for DB5 Advisors, where she's helping international entrepreneurs navigate regulatory systems, resonated a little bit with my background in regulatory. And then beatinsurancedenials.com also resonates because I've had myself and family have challenges with the insurance industry and what it takes to basically have a healthy environment. So all of this stuff, plus a bunch of life things that we seem to have in common, just made it something I really wanted to have Kelli on the show. So Kelli, welcome to Design Review.
Hi from Weird LinkedIn to Design Review. The hero's journey is complete.
I think the hero's journey is just starting. So lovely to have you here. I think we're probably going to have so many things to talk about. We're going to have to actually watch the time, but for at least a half an hour, I'm just going to surf with whatever happens to come up, if that's okay with you.
All right.
So the first thing that we do, given that this format tends to follow the kind of format that I used to use as a project manager and having design reviews, is we end up talking about a project or a passion or a purpose that somebody has in mind. And you had talked about, well, actually, why don't you go ahead and share what's the topic that you'd like us to be talking about during this, or at least to start talking off?
Well, first of all, with my work, one thing that's always a commonality with my work is a person or a company is coming up against a big system, whether that's the government, insurance company. Sometimes these systems, they just seem daunting and they seem like they're locked. And I can write an insurance company the very same letter that Robert just wrote, put it on my letterhead, and the response is, oh, well, if he would have just told us, it's all a big misunderstanding. Well, of course it's not. He just said it. I just changed the tense a little bit. But then we get money or a good outcome, coverage for a needed medical procedure. Someone encountering the government, all of a sudden there's a hearing for them. There's a way they can present their case, and we try to get them through all that. So that's the professional side.
Okay. Well, and we can, there's a lot we're going to cover while we get there. And the first question I ask everybody, and I believe this may be a story, but it's legit, is that pursuit and the work that you're doing is the answer to a problem. And so my first question is, what's the why? What is it in life, which you alluded to, that this is the answer for? So kind of set us up so that we know what the design review is talking about. What's the problem we're solving here?
It's a good time to think of a grandmother or grandfather, aunt, uncle, somebody that's a stand-up person. They want to pay their bills. They want to do everything right. They're saying, I worked all my life. I saved. Why is this happening to me? Or I'm working now and I'm really trying hard, but why can't I just even get health care? And my strength is in identifying the system that is making them feel locked out, edged over to the margin or whatever, and then help them get in. So it could be appealing a housing voucher being taken away. It could be appealing an insurance denial, which I'm really loud about on LinkedIn. Or it could be an entrepreneur who wants to come to the United States or wants to send their product here and they're intimidated by a stack of forms.
Well, I really appreciate that. I will say that lawyers often get kind of a bad rap. I'm sure you know about that.
I hadn't noticed.
and I think one of the reasons for that may be that there's a presumption that lawyers are used against the kind of people that you are actually helping.
Yeah, sometimes we are.
And then whenever the plain folk, meaning like me, non-lawyers, hear about that, usually there's something that tends to defensiveness. But what the work you're doing is more like, I guess what we call kind of defense attorney work, where you're representing individuals that are in a potentially David versus Goliath sort of a situation. Is that?
Yeah, I had 50 homeowners in 35 homes who experienced a flood, and they were told summarily, you have to move out. And we went through an administrative process, appeals, a federal process. We had all those trains running on different rails at once to keep them housed. And we kept them housed for over 3 years. And then when they finally had to move, they got money.
Okay.
And for a lot of them, they bought their first single family home that they owned, like what I'm sitting in, except fancier.
Well, I really appreciate hearing about that. We don't hear about those things very often. Usually there's some large protracted battle, and we may end up, I will try not to spin off into, because I have a lot of opinions about how the legal system doesn't serve people often or is used to abuse them. But it's possible that we may get into that, because part of your work is making sure that people receive fair verdicts, fair results. And I really appreciate that.
And then someone who didn't appreciate it was a judge who tried to put me in jail.
Oh, boy.
And it was at the peak of COVID. It was going to be the Cook County Jail, where there are some very unpleasant abuse that's part and parcel of going into Cook County that is going to happen. And best case scenario, I would have gone through and gotten out in a few months, weeks, whatever, and brought COVID home to my husband. The worst case scenario was much worse.
Yikes. Now, you had mentioned when we were talking about earlier, that there was something traumatic that happened in the courtroom that had you kind of shift directions. Is that where is that?
Very perceptive. Yeah. They don't get anything past the youngins. This cigar is not just a cigar, or it is just a cigar. I ran out. I decided at that point that if that's who the people of Illinois think needs to sit on the bench, then I don't need to be in Illinois. So I transferred my license to DC.
Got that. Well, I'm really sorry about that, but some of the times, and maybe this becomes the bigger picture of what we talk about, because we both talk about having significant turns in life, and I think a lot of people end up going through that, so that may end up being kind of the bigger picture of what we're talking about, is navigating that. So it says that was that one really nasty judge that was taking issue with what you were doing. That was enough for you to say, okay, I'm done with this location. Let's shift gears here.
That and other things. I mean, obviously for years it was an uphill battle. The court system was really designed to say, if you're accused of not paying your mortgage or your rent, you're probably guilty. You probably need to move. So one of my uphill struggles was just to tell people who called me, don't pack. We're going to try to fight this. We're going to try to figure out what we can do. And I was really aggressive with bringing in the Fair Housing Act when it was necessary and so forth. And this really all comes back to what I do now, a lot of times with drugs, pharmaceuticals, supplements, because it's all making it through the administrative processes that are there to help people. Sometimes you don't go straight in to talk to a judge. You start with a government entity and they can give you a lot of relief.
Okay. So now your work is centered around regulatory and pharmaceuticals and that work. And are you largely representing individuals or companies now, so that we can kind of like we're going to try and align ourselves on, okay, what is the work now? Where has this evolved, and what's the current scenario?
So with insurance, the very best client is a practitioner who's not getting paid by the insurance and they don't want to pursue their own patient. They want to pursue the insurance. And I can do that if the jurisdiction and everything aligns.
Okay.
And then my other very common client is a pharmaceutical or supplement company. And those can range from one person that dried out the dandelion roots in their yard and found out it did a great thing when it was brewed into tea, to a company that has developed and patented an over-the-counter supplement.
Well, that's fascinating. And I on one hand, it's hard to fathom, having invested so much of your life in your pursuit, 25 years in that realm of the legal profession. I spent 37 years in engineering and 25 years at my last company. My left turn, so to speak, was choosing to retire, which really was change everything from being engineering focused to being a life coach focus. What was the process that you went through when you did that? Because moving jurisdictions was one thing, but it also sounds like you moved your focus and got a bunch more training. So can you talk a little bit about what that transition and transformation?
My wording at the time that it happened was, I'm retiring. Forget this. I've saved my money. I can be independent. I don't have to work, so why should I? Then as I got, put state of Illinois on notice that my license is on retirement, it went into retirement in good standing because I had never done anything wrong. I started going to courses in medicinal plants at Cornell University. That resulted in a certificate, and that was just fulfilling a lifelong dream. I like working with herbs. I like getting the sniffles and trying to cure it myself. And I've had good success with certain formulas that I make. And then that some of the professors said, you're pretty good. Why don't you go on for more education? And pharmacy ended up being a place that I could do. I didn't see myself being a doctor. I didn't see myself completing the rotations and everything. But pharmaceutical science with an emphasis in regulation, it dovetailed perfectly.
Yeah, that's really pretty amazing. So then what you ended up doing was sort of like blending, your skill set and your background, your experience with what you were doing with all of the legal and the courtroom work with your passion, which that's another thing that fascinates me, because that's basically what I did. I just blended engineering with, social science, neurobiology, and, spiritual teachings to be the life coach that I am now. So that's fascinating. That's amazing. And how early in that process did you realize, oh wait, this is it. This is what I'm supposed to do?
Really at Cornell, because I was completing the courses, doing very well, usually getting every possible point, having side conversations with the professors who were very supportive, kind of realizing I found a place where I understand and I think I can contribute. And of course, there are discussion boards in almost every class these days. And there would be a demand, Kelli, was that legal? What would we do if we got a letter like this? What do you think of this label? I think I'm giving out some free legal advice here, but if you give me credit.
Well, it's, I think, we have something in common, that retiring, usually when someone retires, they've got the means to survive regardless. Was that the situation you had?
Yeah, I was really ready to go into retirement.
And one of the things I found is that gave me a lot of freedom. Yeah. And I'm not doing what I'm doing in order. In fact, it's taken me some time to be willing to like be paid or to get through that. But that's not my point. That's not the point. The point really is like this is a chance for me to fulfill on having a life that really lights me up in a new way, that helping people makes a difference for me. And it sounds like it's kind of similar to where you're going there. It's like, let's just go where the light is.
Now, I'm not taking that abusive client that's angry. They don't have a good case. They're willing to pay, but they see pay as controlling someone and calling and screaming. Those aren't my clients. I've no doubt that if I sent you a couple $1,000s and called and screamed at you, my couple thousand would come right back and you'd say, you're not a good fit. And that's how it works here.
You were quite right. It's nice to have that kind of freedom. What's kind of funny is like back a quarter century ago, I used to teach ballroom dance. And I taught to make the money to pay for my lessons and my costumes and my contest entry fees, but I never intended to make a profit. And so as a result, I taught who I wanted to teach, the way I wanted to teach. And if people wanted something else, I'm like, there's other teachers.
Yeah. There's phone books full of lawyers, or LinkedIn's full of lawyers.
Well, yeah, and we know a few between the two of us. Well, that's really interesting. So as we get into this space, it's been a bit of a journey. And so one of the things that I ask everybody is like, well, what's gone well and what has not gone the way that you planned on, and that maybe you learned some lessons along the way. Would you like to share, pick one of those directions that you'd like to share from?
I'd like to start with one thing and then segue into something that I think goes into the Jungian containers that I asked you about in a separate conversation. What goes well? Well, a mother called me. Her son had pediatric rare cancer, needed a treatment that was hot. That was the last hope, highly recommended. They said, the insurance company said, we won't tell you if we cover it or not until after the treatment. The hospital in turn said, we won't do the treatment unless you either have insurance coverage confirmed or you sign paperwork saying that you're reliable for the whole amount. The amount, she didn't want to lie, so good for her. The amount they were asking her to guarantee was more than she made in a year for one treatment. So she called me up on a Friday. I called her back that afternoon. I said, before you send money, send no money now. Go into your personnel office, or I think they call it HR now, and say these words. And I gave her a script. And she said, what does it mean? And I said, doesn't matter. They know what it means. She calls me back Tuesday. How did you know? She went in Monday, and by Tuesday morning, she had a thumbs up. It's covered. So sometimes it's just knowing where to push the buttons to get what people need. And then, of course, she's a wonderful person. I don't give my services away, but she wanted to know where to send a check. And I said, take your kid, for a meal on the way home or on the way to, or a treat after he completes chemo or whatever needs to happen. I obviously don't do very many where I say don't send any money, but that was one that goes into the, karma. I hope.
Well, and I hear you. I do. In fact, for 5 years, I've done almost all of my work was pro bono, in one form or another. Just friends that I was helping out. I've been coaching a lot longer than I've had a business, and I still do some of that because, I do work with my church, and it just really, it feels right to do that. Right. Also, at some point, my business doesn't continue to sustain itself unless I let some people pay me. So, we got to have some balance in there as well.
Well, I'm at the send money. I'm at the Cardi B speaks for me level most of the time. What doesn't work is there are a lot of, you referred earlier to lawyers not having a good reputation, and there are a lot of posers, both around lawyers and non-lawyers, who are taking advantage of the narrative around insurance to do unauthorized practice of law. At the end of the day, it's a consumer fraud issue. I don't like to see consumers defrauded.
Yeah. And there's, that's really unfortunate. And I appreciate anybody who's standing up for, those of us that don't, because like corporations, and there's all kinds, there's some really great, benevolent, supportive corporations. And there's some other ones that are basically doing things because they can, and because they make some person very wealthy. A lot of that discussion going on these days, and that just is very disheartening. Especially when folks like me just feel like there's nothing we can do about it. So knowing that there are people out there like you, there's folks in the legal profession that are really not only helping people, but that's like what you want to do. Right. That's really great to know that happens. And all right, you alluded to it, so I'm gonna like open the door here. So what? First of all, help us get there so it doesn't become some giant switching of tracks. But what ties what we were doing into the topic, because we can go wherever you want to go.
So when I changed gears, I had opportunities to find out who my friends were, where it was reciprocal, where it's not reciprocal, where I can give and give and give, where I can think we're friends, but whenever I get a compliment, it's backhanded. My hair doesn't look as bad as it did yesterday. That kind of thing. I'm feeding a couple of lawyers that lived near me would stop at my house on the way home, but then I was working just as hard as them all day, plus feeding them, and there would be backhanded comments about my house not being, fancy enough, because I worked all day too. So that made me start thinking, and then I serve in my practice now a lot of other lawyers, but I set more limits. And something that happens is when people have weaknesses or challenges, if they're addressed head on, it's better, but often they're not addressed head on, it's subconscious. A person like me who really emphasizes hitting all the deadlines, knowing all the little picky local rules, not practicing law in a state where I'm not licensed, all those things, the other people can sort of let things slide and they assume I'll get it. And when you're running around trying to pick up after everybody all the time, that can be very tiring, and it can not serve you because you're exhausted and angry, and somebody just came over and insulted your house or your hair. And then it can also be not serving them because they're not learning to watch the calendar for deadlines, which is a key part of being a lawyer, or how to analyze some of the non-sexy stuff. Part of law is sexy. And I come in and say, I got somebody's insurance paid. That sounds so great. But when I say I filed it on time, but that's really the win. So I kind of think sometimes we become the ritual container. Don't worry about the deadline. Kelly's got it. Don't worry about what court it gets filed in. Kelly's got it.
That brought up a lot of different things when you were talking about that and that history, and what you're, we can get into the details of ritual container, and at the moment, what's coming up to me is like, that's all of that sounds like boundary work. All of that sounds like, where's, what are the communicated expectations or not? What are the presumptions of what's going on? What do I allow people to do for me? Because like you said, that you have a lot of people from, you have a different set of people that you're in touch with now than before. And I had the same sort of thing happen for me. And I've been learning about, okay, well, what do I uphold? What are my limits? What will I do in the case of certain situations? What will I build on? What will I say? No, thank you. Or could you please rephrase that or whatever? And in my past, I never used to do that. I guess it'd be the equivalent of like, making people food that are just like, not being kind or understanding to you. My life was pretty rough back when I just tried to do what would get me a positive response. And now I think like what you're talking about now is like, I'm a lot more honest about like this is how life works for me. This is what I do. And if you don't like it, fine. There's, other people.
Do you know anybody who teaches a workshop on boundaries?
Nice setup. I got my boundaries workshop coming up on June 19th and 26th.
I'll send my invoice.
Yeah, that's nice. I will say that is one of my favorite topics because it's almost universal. Human being. I don't think any of us was born to parents who understood what healthy boundaries look like. And so we kind of had to find out on our own, often through the process of not having them. So what's life like now? Is it difficult to uphold what matters to you? And also like when you're talking about the concept of the ritual container, what does that look like specifically in your world? So that, let's build on this because I think this is a great topic that.
Well, it's all sunshine and rainbows and unicorns now. I don't have any problems and everything has just fallen into place.
Yeah, sure.
But when you get done laughing, so I had a very well-intentioned former student, very good lawyer, hire me a couple years ago, and we were months into the case, and I hadn't seen a single document about the case, which is sort of malpractice-y, except that I had consistently told both the client and the co-counsel, like, I need this. I'm just treading water here. So I had to withdraw.
Okay.
And, say I can't represent people. So, but I think there it was sort of like Kelli will take care of it and she'll figure out how to write all these pleadings in court and she'll do a good job, even if we don't tell her what the case is about. And there was a point where I had to say to the judge, I haven't even seen a paper yet. I'm not providing meaningful representation. I have to withdraw.
Okay.
So things got weird and my colleague was being abused too by the client in a way I didn't know about, but I can't solve problems you don't tell me about, as I love to tell my husband. And then I had another one where another former student hired me and just because of a mistake in the office, it just got into a deadline problem. So I took the work and provided them something to turn in, but it wasn't my best work because it was something that should have taken a couple of weeks. I had a few hours. So it's always tweaking.
Oh, it's interesting. It's sometimes difficult to know where these topics come up, but I find it so universal. Where, if you don't let people know where your limits are, they'll just push. And often, and I was one who was guilty of this myself. I would either procrastinate or I'd get distracted or I would get busy doing some other thing. And then I would then hope or push or some other word there to have somebody help make up the slack that I wasn't able to make up for. And if you don't provide feedback on that, then people will keep doing that. They'll just keep offloading, their inattentiveness. Is that a kind way to put that? Yeah, well, and it's interesting to do that because then somebody ends up having to pick up the slack, and it becomes unfair, and it continues so long as you allow it to.
Yeah. Well, now I will say about a prospective case, I need all the documents by this date. Otherwise, we don't have an agreement.
And I love that. Yeah, that one of the things that I'm become a big champion for is that, telling people what they can and can't do doesn't tend to work very well. I mean, you try, but telling them what the consequences are and then living into them, which is exactly, you've given several examples of that does work. And I love that approach. It's like, if you can give me the documents or not, but if you don't, this is what I'm going to do, or I'm going to withdraw, or some form like that. And then you're not making them do anything. You're just executing what you said you would.
But niceness isn't helping them. When we're people pleasing and we're being the container and we're taking it all in and we're fixing it and we're running, then that because then it came out later that my former student, was being abused by the client. So putting my foot down enabled her to say, I need the documents because Kelli needs the documents, and all this nonsense that you're calling me with, it isn't getting us over the finish line. So if I would have acted sooner, harsher, I would have been less likable, but I would have modeled how not to be abused.
Well, and we can be harsh, but being really clear and being assertive, I kind of like assertive versus aggressive. But being clear about it, it's like, okay, this is a line. If this doesn't happen, this is the consequence. We're either going to go forward or not, or we can't take the case forward. It doesn't have to be nasty, but it can be like, no, look, this is the boundary. This is what's going to happen. And then I like this so much because instead of becoming an arm wrestling match, it just becomes, this is what I'm going to do. You do whatever you're going to do, but this is what's going to happen. And I didn't used to know this approach at all. I grew up with an abusive father whose tactic was to force people to do whatever he wanted you to do, and not only that, while forcing you to do something you didn't want to do, he would then look like the victim while it was at it. It's kind of classic narcissistic approach. So I ended up learning that reason didn't work for him, and that if you went up against him, you would lose. That was just kind of like a guarantee. So I ended up growing up being sneaky. I ended up growing up like trying to get sympathy, or trying to work my way around it, or trying to like drop hints. So I had no idea how to do this until I was actually in my 50s. By the time I learned this, I had a really good therapist that taught me about it. I love that is this the way you've always been, or was this a learned behavior of basically, saying, instead of trying to force somebody to do something, just say, this is what I'm going to do.
No, I was like a lot of people. I would get pushed and pushed and pushed. Then I would blow up. Then I was the bad person. Well, look at her. She blew up. She yelled at me. I don't know why. She didn't send me 30 emails asking for the documents first. She just screamed at me one day. So it put the narrative in their control, didn't serve anybody. And my first time I was a lawyer, I was a people pleaser because I graduated into the financial collapse. My boss came in as I was packing to go start my private office, actually pursuing insurance companies for vexatious failure to pay, which is a thing in Illinois. Boss came in and said, we've got money to start one of the first advice desks in the courthouse. It was a big deal 20 some years ago. It was new. Now they're everywhere. We need you to be the director. And I said, how long do I have to work before I can quit in peace and have us be friendly? And he said 2 years. So after 2 years, when I would try to quit, it'd be, well, so finally I had to say, I've been here 2.5 years. I won't be here on my birthday, the day after my birthday, the day after that. You can see a pattern emerging. And yeah, that's when he finally hired my replacement. But I was going around trying to help people on a nonprofit basis, and often being taken advantage of by nonprofits where nobody was going hungry. But I wasn't a nonprofit, so I should do everything for free. So I learned some hard lessons.
And that's sometimes how that goes. But I find it really fascinating that you used to be the blow up, which, by the way, I identify with. That was I would either get walked on and I would take it so long and then I would explode. I was like a volcano. I tell you, that doesn't work. That's the pattern that, I kind of grew up with, but it doesn't work. I find that this approach, this like, here's your consequences approach, it does work amazingly well. And it doesn't, but by work, I don't mean it changes people, but it offloads my stress and things get really clear. And then I find out what people are like, which is the kind of thing that could change the people you associate with, because the people that don't belong around you will figure it out.
Yeah. It's a little glitch when you're licensed. Because like when I want to, certain relationships I want to end, I might even have to get a judge's permission. But oftentimes the client sees that pleading saying I need to get out because I haven't been paid, or I'm 6 months in and I haven't seen a single document. And then this is real. I'm going to get that check over. I'm going to get that pile of documents over.
Al, and I've become a big champion for this. I love that that's the way you've kind of come across doing things. I'd like more people to know about it. But it's I love the sense of freedom that I get, because I thought I used to have to convince people. I used to thought I had to like sweet talk them and like be nice to them. Meanwhile, being clear and kind is a lot more sustainable than being nice. Yes. And I'm still a kind person. I don't abuse people. But I won't just take it with a smile as they do harmful things to me. I won't do that anymore.
Nice doesn't leave you with a lot of money to hire your legal team with when they threaten you with jail for being nice. I was doing a really good thing that anybody listening to our voices, I guarantee, would have loved that case. I was helping some recent immigrant men assert their fair housing rights. If I'd done anything less, I would have been committing malpractice and I should have lost my license. I did the minimum. And to show you how reasonable I was, the people who came to court and kept me out of jail were the corporation counsel for the city of Chicago. These are people that don't always end up on the right side of fair housing. So if they thought we need to come testify that Kelli didn't brutalize us too bad and shouldn't go to jail, that's saying something about being able to have peace with my enemies, my natural enemy. So it was flabbergasting, but niceness wasn't getting me anywhere. What got me somewhere at that point was a legal fund.
I really appreciate that. I'm also sorry because, we think when we're being nice that we're being in a way that is valuable to the world, but it ends up being self-sacrifice. And when being kind turns into niceness and that turns into self-harm, that doesn't work. I'm glad that you got out of that. I'm really glad they came and stood for you. That's a really wonderful thing to hear. And now things are working in a far. Do you find that the environment you're in now is easier to sustain that, or that your decision to be able to stand up for yourself got you to there? What's the chicken and the egg here?
Well, gosh, it was scary. At the time I joined LinkedIn because Cornell said join LinkedIn so your classmates can follow you and you can have more conversations. I only brought about 30 people from my old life. I mean, family went. People who could only talk about my weight. People who could only talk about how obnoxious I was. One colleague that had always really bent my ear and wouldn't use my favorite way to communicate and insisted on these long phone conversations. I called him for help when I was threatened with jail. And he said, I'm really busy. Can somebody else do it? And that's after draining like probably 20, 30, 40 hours a year out of my office for a decade or two. And then, well, I guess here's the telling thing. Let people tell on themselves. Of the people who noticed I disappeared, and my favorite way to communicate is email, guess how many people sent me an email? Goose egg. They actually took to calling each other and asking where I was when I changed my number rather than just drop me a line at my preferred mode of communication. So we've been colleagues for 20 years. Now that you don't have a hold on me to force me to pick up the phone, you still won't resort to my preferred method of communication. That's all you need to know about people that overreach.
People can be awfully self-involved, can't they?
Yeah, but I think there's a line where they're self-involved. We're all on the road trying to get to our destination on time, even though we left a few minutes late. But then there are the people that get a perverse joy from running you off the road.
Yeah, then there's that, and I've known some, and there's some that are, you know, out there in the world right now, and I suppose that kind of brings me around to why I appreciate, you know, the group that we met within,
Yes.
you know, the whole weird LinkedIn community, because even though it's made of humans and humans have their issues at times, the acceptance and the appreciation for people just being who they really are, that's the life I'm living into now, and it sounds like that's the life you're living into now. It's like, you know, we are who we are, and the people we belong around will find us and see us and be able to say, hey, you're cool, I want to talk to you.
There are how many billions of people on Earth? And if I try to go randomly A, B, C, D, and please all of those billions, I might never get to Robert Haynes. But if I go on LinkedIn and say some weird thing, here comes Robert Haynes going, that's weird, come on my podcast. And that's the key. That's the key. Let the people who need to lose my address lose it or never have it. And that makes time for you, because what do we have time for? We've got time for maybe 100 friends that we keep up with. We've got room for maybe 25 clients at a time. We can't take on all billion.
No, and you find the people that you need to find by being you. And I love that weird has, you know, been kind of coined. I needed the word weird because I was so afraid of being in a way that was offending people that I would stifle who I really was. But when the encouragement to be weird came out, that's like, all right, I'm going to like let it hang out. And it was like an overshoot response in control theory, but it got me to the point where like I was willing to say some of the things that I'd been holding back on. And then to go reach out to the other people that are being weird too, because it turns out they're just fun.
And the other ones, the stuffed shirts, they're not going to like you anyway. Just skip. You're never going to be as stuffed of a shirt as they are. It's your weird is going to leak through. So just go full weird, get us in there and have a party.
And that's what it's been. We've been doing this, you know, the weird thing for over a year now. And I've met so many great people and had so many really inspired conversations. It really lift me up, because I mean, that's how this whole podcast even happened, is because I started having conversations with folks that I really liked having conversations with. I got invited onto a podcast myself, and I'm like, well, this was pretty cool. And all we did was just chat the whole time. And then I just started doing that with the friends that I've met, and it's been truly delightful. I'm realizing that we're starting to, you know, be at the end of our time. I want to make sure that anybody that wants to reach you can. So if something that you've talked about and some part of the message is like, hey, I'd love to know Kelli, or I may need some representation of some kind, how would people find you?
The best way to reach me is DM. And as Robert can tell you, I'm not being coy when I say that I'm slow to go off the platform. I got hacked last October, so I'm a little bit more careful than some people, but that also means I'm careful with your information. But please don't send me a DM that says, hi, how are you? I'm probably going to write back, I'm miserable and my commode overflowed and my feet are wet. and I don't think that's going to move your case forward unless you're a plumber. So what I want you to do is write me a brief idea what you want. Hi, Kelly. My name is Joe. I have an auto insurance problem. Do you know about auto insurance? And I'll write back, yes, I do. Tell me a bit more. So I had a very appropriate email a couple of days ago, but the person wanted me to watch a video about their case. And I said, nah, I'm barely going off this platform for Robert's video, not yours. So tell me a verbal summary. And they did. And it's a perfect, it may not be a perfect fit because I may not be licensed in the jurisdiction, but it's a perfect fit for me to get them steered in the right way.
That's wonderful. So I'll get your LinkedIn address attached to there. Is there an email that people would use, if it turns out there is some other or website or whatever, I will make sure that I get into the program notes so that anybody that does want to reach out to you can.
My website, I'm just now learning GitHub and how to be more secure in my communications. So it's a very bare bones website, but I'm at kellyboyden.com. But I spend a lot more time at LinkedIn.
Okay, great. Well, I'll make sure that all of that is available so that somebody can reach you if they need to.
And you need to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Better call Kel.
That's your call line. Call Kel. I have to put this in and I keep forgetting, just for anybody that's listening, I am Robert Haynes. My life coaching business, Engineering Your Life, serves people that want to help other people, especially if you're interested in finding your life's purpose or pursuing a life that really lights you up. Please talk to me. I love helping people that have that as their mission.
And how does it work, Robert? How does it work? How do people retain you?
Oh, well, basically they DM me or they also email me. I have a website, which is engineeringyourlife.net.
And a newsletter.
And I have a newsletter and I've got this podcast and I've got a blog and I'm on Substack. We're fanning it out. All right. Anybody that watches this will have links to see me more. But if somebody's interested in group coaching or one-on-one coaching, or the workshops like the Boundaries workshop that's coming up. I'm not too sure if this episode will air before or after that, but either way, there will be more. All they need to do is reach out to DM me or otherwise. And I love meeting and talking to people about what they're about. It's one of my favorite things to do. And Kelly, this has been wonderful. I'm so glad that I reached out to you, and I'm really glad that you had the time and navigated the technology hurdles that we had to be able to have this episode record. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.